I spent weeks crafting something that meant everything to me. It didn't even blip, not a spike, not a wave, not a whisper. Then, something I made in 10 minutes, barely thought about it, went viral. The rushed idea, the one I almost didn't post, the throwaway, that one got the clicks, the shares, the attention. And I should be grateful, right? But all I felt was hollow. Not because the quick win didn't matter, but because the thing that did matter didn't. It's a strange grief watching your most personal work float into silence while noise gets awarded. And I'm not angry, just tired. Tired of pouring myself into something sincere and feeling like it never stood a chance. There was a time when art felt like communion, when creating something wasn't just self-expression, it was connection. But today it feels more like calibration. Not what do I feel, but what will play. Not what do I need to say, but what will they click? And somewhere in that shift, something sacred got lost. Because we don't make art for people anymore. We make it for platforms, for systems, for scripts that decide what gets seen and what gets buried. In the old myths, art connected souls. Now it's filtered through an invisible architecture of rules, tuned not to meaning, but to metrics. The algorithm doesn't care what it cost you to make something. It doesn't care how long it took, or how vulnerable you were, or how hard it was to share. It cares about click-through, about retention, about rate of rise. It takes your sentence, the one you bled for, and asks, will they stay for the next 5 seconds? It's not a villain. It's not cruel. But it's indifferent. And indifference is a kind of erasure, because when meaning and visibility are no longer linked, we stop trusting our instincts. We start thinking, maybe my best work is the problem. There's an erosion that happens quietly. At first, it's subtle. You soften the idea to make it more palatable. You trim the scene you loved because it might be too slow. You remove a truth because it's too niche. You want to reach more people, so you compromise just a little, then a little more, until one day you look at your own work and don't see yourself in it anymore. The stakes used to be emotional. Am I saying what I need to say? Now they feel performative. Will it trend? Will I disappear? I've made things I hated that performed well. I've made things I loved that vanished. And both outcomes left me asking the same question. What's the point of making something real if the world is only tuned to the fake? We begin to feel like we're building signal flares in a digital storm. Flickers of meaning, trying not to drown in a sea of relatable clips and recycled sounds. And even success doesn't always feel like success, because when the metrics are high and the message feels hollow, you start to wonder if you're still an artist or just a technician following a formula for engagement. You start to believe that meaning doesn't matter anymore. But what if that's exactly why it does? What if the uselessness of meaningful work is what makes it sacred? The algorithm can measure attention, but it can't measure ache. It can track retention, but not resonance. It doesn't know what it cost you to tell the truth. It doesn't recognize the courage it takes to be sincere in a system built for spectacle. Maybe that's what makes slow, honest art a kind of rebellion. Because we're told to optimize, to strategize, to produce. But when we create something that no algorithm asked for, something quiet, difficult, strange, we're reclaiming identity from machinery. We're saying, I see the system, but I'm still going to speak. Maybe no one listens. Maybe it flops. But that moment when you hit publish on something that mattered to you, that moment is alive and real and yours. And that's not useless. That's meaning on its own terms. History is full of artists who weren't appreciated in their time, who wrote in the dark, who made things that the systems of the moment couldn't understand. And we read them now. We hear them now. Because meaning waits. It survives past the scroll. I've started to believe that every time I make something that isn't optimized, something messy, thoughtful, untrendy, I'm leaving a breadcrumb. Not to go viral, but to say, I was here. I felt something. I tried. And maybe someone else will stumble across that breadcrumb when they need it. Not because it was loud, but because it was true. We talk a lot about beating the algorithm, but maybe the real win is choosing not to become one. Maybe the victory isn't virality, it's vulnerability. Not to reach, but resonance. Not to trend, but truth. So yeah, maybe the algorithm won't favor what I make. Maybe it'll bury it. Maybe it'll get 10 views, 2 likes, and no comments. But if one person sees it and feels a little less alone, then was it ever really useless? If I'm going to be buried by the feed, I want it to be with something that came from the heart. If I'm going to be ignored, I want it to be while saying something I actually meant. I want to write things that algorithms can't understand, but people can feel. Because that's the kind of art that survives. Quietly, stubbornly, human. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and tell me in the comments Am I right? Am I wrong? Tell me anything. But remember, thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.